Hey everyone, thank you very much for joining, and big thank you to TrueLayer for sponsoring and supporting this series on crypto exchanges. We're joined here by Will, founder of by Uzair, founder of Decentralized crypto exchange Symmetric Finance, and by Will, who works at Dispute Settlement Center, is from a non-profit space, but who is also actively involved in the crypto space, and particularly in the decentralized finance space from various angles, notably as a participant and end user. So we're talking here about the pros and cons of centralized versus decentralized crypto exchanges. Obviously, it's a slightly controversial / popular topic with various pros and cons of each, and whilst there's a growing trend towards decentralized finance and decentralized exchanges, it's fair to say the user experience isn't quite 100% perfected yet. So there's no clear answer, but it's great to have Will and Uzair here, who are both been working and active in the space for quite a long time. Thank you for joining us. So first question to Uzair. Obviously, you've got Symmetric Finance, a decentralized exchange. Why did you opt for having a decentralized exchange over a centralized exchange? And what would you see the main benefits of decentralized exchanges are?
First off, I'd like to start by saying thank you for having me, Erica. It's great to talk about this subject that's very near and dear to my heart. I guess for me, the reason I started Symmetric is because I believe that decentralized structures, especially DEXs or decentralized exchanges, allow for better alignment of stakeholder interests. So what do I mean by that? Users, investors, people that are working on the project can have a more of a shared vision and better communication and understanding and control decision-making collectively rather than sort of one man or one group of people imposing their will on everyone else. No pun intended, by the way, Will. But from my perspective, I think alignment of stakeholder interest or having a shared sort of understanding and vision as to where an organization or a group of people are heading is very important. And that sort of plays to the longer term sustainability of any organization. So that's why I'd say primarily I opted to structure Symmetric as more of a decentralized organization rather than a centralized one.
No, thank you. And over to you, Will. I think it's fair to say, whilst as you says there is more ownership and control and sort of autonomy for users in the decentralized space, it's fair to mention that the user experience and ease of use of decentralized exchanges hasn't quite caught up with centralized exchanges yet, and that's largely because they're newer, they're younger, and they haven't had the time to grow yet. But where would you see that from a user experience point of view? Do you see that as it's just a matter of time until they catch up, or is there more to it?
I do think that that it's probably just a matter of time, and as I think the decentralized finance industry grows, I think you'll see it pick up in offering insurance funds, risk insurance, the same sort of thing that you would get from a more centralized space. And I think they'll become more user-friendly and accessible at the same time. I think one of the beauties of decentralized finance is that really it is truly accessible to anyone. But at the same time, accessibility is only as good as, do I really feel like I trust it? Do I really feel like my money is safe here? And that's not just an end fact, but also a user feeling as well. So a user is going to want to come on and not just, a lot of folks aren't going to do the research into why is my money safe. They're going to say, does it feel right here? And if there's a lot of extra steps, if there's a lot of things like that, I think that can create some uncertainty. And so I think as decentralized finance continues to grow, that certainty, that user experience is going to continue to improve.
Thank you. And you talk about trust, and it's one of those factors of crypto that crypto exchanges are a big red inviting flag to hackers. You've got a platform where there's a lot of crypto stored on that, and that's been seen as a big temptation to hackers. And it's been such a regular occurrence that you read in the news that this exchange has been hacked, or that exchange has been hacked, or also that, especially on the centralized exchanges front, that this exchange founder has exit scammed, has effectively taken all of the money together, and maybe they said that they would be storing it securely, or they'd be storing it in users' wallets, but effectively what they've done is lied to their users and accumulated all their users' crypto in one space, and then when they had enough, ran off with the money and said thank you very much. So that has happened. So I think everyone in the crypto space is familiar with some of the security concerns and the custody concerns of crypto exchanges, and can you trust the founders? And we've seen several of the issues facing centralized exchanges regarding security, regarding custody, and regarding being able to trust the main people running them to see that they've really got a good platform, and what are their policies in the eventuality if there is a hack. Do they have insurance, or will they pay out of a security fund? But there's a lot of people say that decentralized exchanges are therefore safer, but not necessarily. One still has to trust the founders. It's not like in crypto there's a sort of the one go-to verified auditor that will check every part of decentralized exchanges to see that there's no flaws coded into that. There's still an element of trust, until we get to the stage where there really are good third-party auditors to do all of these checks. And even recently there was one of the third-party auditors that themselves basically exit scammed and proved that the audits and reviews they were given about some of the decentralized projects weren't actually real. So how does one counter that? What would you see as the sort of the main security concerns of each, and which do you think will ultimately be safer? I'll go to you first, Will, from a user experience point of view in terms of storing your money.
Sure. I remember a pretty prominent story, and I cannot remember the centralized exchange, but they literally forgot the seed phrase and forgot where they wrote it down, and so they couldn't access any of the users crypto anymore. And that isn't even a scam. It's on a centralized space. It's just, hey, the person that was supposed to write this down, that lost it.
And it shouldn't come down to one person having
no, of course
to be
not.
responsible for,
but herein sort of lies the problem a little bit with more centralized spaces, I think, right? Is that who's watching that, and so like I said, I think as the decentralized space continues to grow, I think one of the things that we're seeing is such mass innovation in that space, and I have confidence that I think the decentralized space is going to continue to grow because of that, because I think it allows for more innovation. It allows for these formalized, sort of decentralized organizations to get together and really use the power of a community, as opposed to just a single person or group of investors. And so how, I'm not quite sure, but will the innovation come? I am quite confident.
And thank you. And over to you, is two stages of that question. A, for decentralized exchanges, how can they ensure security and custody, and how can they build up that trust? And on another separate factor, do you see that decentralized exchanges will become known and trusted as being the more secure go-to, and what is needed for that to really happen?
Yeah, I think we'll kind of hit the nail on the head. It is a young space, so we will continue to see innovation around issues that pertain to the decentralized space. But having said that, I think security issues, hackers and scammers is more of a universal problem, both for centralized and decentralized exchanges. It's not exclusive to one or the other. And I think that has to be tackled by the industry collectively rather than just the decentralized folks or the people who are working in centralized organizations. So, I'll sort of paint that as an industry-wide issue rather than a DEX or a centralized exchange issue. Now, as far as building trust goes, I think blockchain inherently as a technology sort of addresses a lot of those risks. But when you put a centralized structure on top of a decentralized technology, I think it's counterintuitive to how it's meant to work and how it's meant to grow and innovate. And I think decentralized organizations, DAOs specifically, as we've seen the emergence over the past 5, 6, 7 years, they continue to sort of challenge that notion that people have that, hey, they're going to be less secure or they're going to move slower. I find that, for us, specifically at Symmetric DAO, we've had people from all over the world join our DAO and sort of participate in decision making and bring new ideas and challenge any sort of notions that come maybe even from groups within the DAO itself. So it allows for more debate, it allows for more transparency, and it definitely sort of furthers this mission of being inclusive and having the ability to innovate quicker. So that would be sort of my take on it.
No, thank you. And jumping away from security to another aspect of user experience, liquidity, decentralized exchanges, and again, taking into account that it's a new space and things are changing super, super fast. But decentralized exchanges haven't yet had the liquidity that you've got in centralized exchanges, and things can move slower at times. Do you see that as a problem, or is that just a factor that it's an early stage thing and more liquidity will come? And obviously we're seeing some things moving quite quickly in the space, but for centralized exchanges, a lot of people get either a better user experience or a greater feeling of comfort and trust from the fact that centralized exchanges do have more liquidity and have more users largely. Uzair?
Yeah, so I would say it's an opportunity for the decentralized exchanges, for groups like us, for other organizations that are starting to emerge. I think, the decentralized space is so much younger. I mean, Bitcoin is 13 years old, from 2008 when it was first sort of inceptionized or, the intention was laid out for it to now. We saw actually the first few years were not as quick as we've seen in the past, recent past. So I would say it's more of an opportunity for decentralized exchanges to grow and establish themselves. And I think liquidity will come as this space matures further. Crypto as a whole sort of had a tough start, because of some of the security issues we were talking about earlier. But I think as people get more comfortable and develop an understanding of the space and how things work, they tend to experiment. Even now, although people are starting to adopt cryptocurrencies more widely than they did in the past, even now there's new sort of technologies and new business models that are emerging that people are not yet familiar with. This term DAO that we've mentioned quite a few times in this discussion is a new term. It's newer than cryptocurrencies as a concept or blockchain as a technology. So I think the spirit of decentralization will continue to sort of spur this forward, and I think in the coming months and years we'll see this become something that people and users specifically are more comfortable with and understand the benefits and the drawbacks, and so are willing to bet on these types of structures a bit more. the more sort of centralized exchanges have started to notice that, hey, this decentralized space is growing faster, so they're starting to enter the decentralized space themselves. If you look at some of the bigger names in the industry, they all have products and teams that are working towards innovating to become more decentralized. So I think it's just a matter of time before we see this sort of become the norm, especially within crypto and blockchain.
Thanks. And then what are your thoughts, Will? Do users see things like lack of liquidity as even being an issue?
Well, from my perspective, as I watch, an exponential growth curve, especially, of the industry as a whole, but especially of decentralized finance right now, I think, that becomes less and less of a concern. The beauty of decentralized finance as well is it is simple enough for me to check liquidity numbers in the click of a button. I don't have to worry that, a centralized space might be having issues with liquidity, which has also happened, right? But I can check that before making an investment. I can, it's transparent, it's right in front of me. And so, I think that's a huge benefit of the decentralized space in that aspect. I also think Uzair really kind of hit the nail on the head as well in thinking about, like, it's not just those questions that are driving people to the DeFi space, because for me it's ideological as well. Part of the reason that I think I'm been in the crypto space for as long as I have are some of the reasons that Uzair touched on, and I think that's going to continue to drive people to the space either way. There's a collective feel, and there's a collective profit, that comes together in that space. That's really a beautiful thing.
Thank you. And one question, again, largely a practicality, the question of on and off ramping, cashing in and out of crypto and fiat. It's long been a struggle of some of the decentralized exchanges to secure on and off ramping partners and banking and everything else related to traditional finance. And so there are less options for people wanting to use decentralized exchanges to be able to sort of onboard. Is that a problem? Are we seeing mostly crypto users going towards a decentralized finance space and mostly people more willing to work with traditional finance, looking at the centralized exchanges? Do we see this as an ongoing problem, or are there already products coming out now that are helping decentralized exchanges have the same on-ramping and off-ramping facilities as in the centralized space?
I think that as a problem becomes larger and larger, and people start to see an opportunity in a certain area, we see organizations, startups, and bigger players that start to cater to those needs. Mm-hmm. And so onboarding users to crypto in general, whether it was someone that was an established player in the centralized space or not, was a challenge. And we've seen that sort of dissipate over time. So I think for the decentralized space, we're going to see similar sort of service providers emerge that cater to those needs. So I think it's really just based on the maturity of the sector itself, rather than regulation or any other bigger hurdle. A lot of people that I speak to in the decentralized space actually use centralized exchanges for on and off ramping because they haven't found the perfect sort of decentralized on-off ramp yet. But we within the Symmetric DAO work with several of these service providers and have access to these on and off ramps. It's just they're not as big as some of the centralized players we've seen in the industry. So I think it's really just a matter of time before this problem becomes a conversation of the past, from my opinion.
We are now seeing players such as Trulea, for example, entering the space and with products to offer to help all sorts of exchanges on and off ramping. It has long been a problem in crypto. And just lastly, to touch on, I mean, I would say the main challenge of decentralized exchanges, we've touched on it already, but user experience hasn't traditionally been good or easy in the decentralized exchanges. And even in centralized exchanges, the user experience now is easier, it's better, it's more accessible than it was even a few years ago. Is that just a matter of time? Will decentralized exchanges catch up in terms of user experience? And how far do you see the space going in general in terms of the need to improve the user experience and ease of use for especially people new to crypto to be able to access the space? Will, what do you think practically on that stand?
Sure. Well, I think to start kind of where you started, I think it's going to continue. The user experience is going to continue to get better and better, and I think it's apparent as a user that it's happening, no matter where you're going. And I think the question is, in my mind, sort of, when will people see decentralized finance as just finance? And I think it's coming soon. I think soon on a historical context, in the next 5 years, not soon tomorrow. But I think so I think that as that user experience improves, I don't think it has to become centralized finance either, right? It doesn't have to look like any of your traditional exchanges. It doesn't even have to look like your bank's website for people to trust it. I think, people will grow into it as much as the industry will grow into people, in other words. Why? Because it works and because, it helps the bottom line.
No, thank you so much. And I think it'll be interesting to see if fees decrease in both of the spaces, the fees of transaction fees on exchanges. That has been a notorious source of contention on both sides. So I think will be interesting to see what happens there. But Will and Uzair, thank you so very much for joining us, and big thank you to Trulea for sponsoring the crypto exchange series.